Released in 1995, Jumping Flash is a first-generation PlayStation game that combines elements of 3D platformers and first-person shooters. An evil mad scientist named Baron Aloha has used giant machines to steal huge divots from a peaceful planet with intent to create a private resort for himself. It is up to Rabbit, a robotic bunny rabbit, to stop the Baron's evil plot and return all the pieces of the planet. Jumping Flash was an incredibly revolutionary game that implemented 3D platformer game mechanics and design elements over a year before Super Mario 64 hit in Japan. Does that mean, as some Nintendo fanboys have implied me saying whenever I've brought it up on forums, that Jumping Flash's levels are as intricately designed as Mario 64's were? No. However, no matter how you look at it, Jumping Flash still did it first. Have you ever played a game where just moving the character around was the most fun part? Rabbit's ability to triple jump for what feels like a mile in the air takes precedent in the game and is the most thrilling and unique aspect of Jumping Flash. Upon his second jump in the air, Rabbit looks down at his feet to give the player the perfect perspective to make a landing on the various platforms, using Rabbit's shadow as a guide, and also gives the game's varied cast of enemies the good old death from above. The feeling of freedom in the movement, and when I first saw the trailer for Jumping Flash 2 from my pack-in PS1 demo disc, the literal feeling of falling in my gut, in Jumping Flash is still unmatched in any game. The first-person jumping system still sets Jumping Flash apart from the pack, and the first-person shooter combat is also a unique touch which gives it a one-of-a-kind feel. There is a special kind of intensity to jumping off a platform that feels like it is a mile in the air to get as much hang time as you can, to come down right on top of an enemy with guns blazing, finally smashing them into pieces with a death stomp. I also found myself gripping my controller for dear life when jumping to a platform I wasn't sure I could make, using every moment of my jump in the air count, moving towards the platform, only to make it at the last second, successfully landing on the very edge. I honestly cannot think of another game I have ever played that has the unique combination of thrills that Jumping Flash does. Outside of Jumping Flash 2, that is. With the exception of the boss levels, and two levels which are more first-person shooter in style, Jumping Flash takes place in large, open 3D levels which find Rabbit searching for 4 jet pods that spell out the word exit, presented as giant carrots in the game, and then finding the exit to the level. The level designs are pretty simplistic, being large open environments with platforms seemingly placed at random to take advantage of Rabbit's jumping abilities. And the level goals too are the exact same in every level outside of the boss fights. It isn't that there's no thought put into the levels, it is that being an early 3D game with nothing prior to go on except 16-bit platformers, it predates more complex designs that came with later 3D platformers. Jumping Flash is also geared towards kids, meaning it keeps the goals simple. The levels themselves seem pretty basic, however, quite a bit of exploration is required to find all the jet pods. And there are even some hidden areas to find in the first-person shooter style levels. The levels also contain bonus stages where players are required to pop all the balloons in the stage for an extra life. And there are many power-ups, like a power pill that makes you invincible for a short period of time, and special weapons, like a barrage of rockets to send at your foes, placed throughout the levels to find. And killing enemies also reveals power-ups. Many of the level themes themselves look to be inspired by older 2D platformer cliches. You have your slippery snow level, your volcano-based theme with lava, your Egyptian level, and even a spaceport level. There's even a very short-lived underwater section of one of the first-person shooter-style levels. However, Jumping Flash still deserves props for being the first to do them in 3D. If there are any downsides to Jumping Flash's incredibly addictive gameplay, it would have to be the fact that the game is over way too quickly, with only 6 worlds to play, and being geared towards kids is relatively easy. Even the boss fights are easy and require very little strategy other than jump on them while shooting them, with a couple of exceptions where the boss has a specific pattern to learn. My first time through the game for this review, not only did I not die at all, but I beat it in less than an hour. After beating the original mode, the extra mode is unlocked, which forces you to play through the game again with shorter time limits on the levels, rearranged jet pod locations, and it even has different routes in the first-person shooter levels. In order to see the real ending of the game, you have to beat extra mode. If you beat the game without continuing, which isn't hard to do, super mode is then unlocked. In super mode, Robert can jump 6 times into the air, come back down from the air super fast at the press of a button, and sprint while holding the L1 button. There's also a time trial mode where gamers can save their fastest level times, and hyper mode, which is unlockable with the code. All of the extra modes do add a lot of replay value, but the game is still very short overall, even with all the extra stuff. Graphically speaking, by PlayStation standards, though the game was praised at the time for its visuals, Jumping Flash is definitely a first-generation PS1 game, meaning it looks dated even by the standards of the PS1. The frame rate is relatively solid with some slowdown here and there, and the special effects are decent. The game even takes advantage of the PS1's much lauded transparency effects that the system was heavily praised for early on. The textures are also blocky first-generation fare. The biggest problem with the visuals is one that plagued a lot of early 3D games, and that is the fact that the visuals could quite literally make some people sick. I'm not talking about the graphics hounds out there who only like pretty games. I'm talking about first generation PS1 visuals, first gen PS1 frame rate, and fully 3D motion, and the literal feeling of falling, quite literally making some gamers who are sensitive to motion sickness dizzy and possibly sick to their stomachs. Also, with the combination of flashing colors, this is a game that those prone to seizures should play with caution as well. Control-wise, though Jumping Flash predates the inclusion of an analog controller, the controls still work perfectly on the D-pad. To use a newer game as an example, imagine the controls of Metroid Prime on the GameCube, minus the lock-on system and the analog stick, and that gives you a pretty good idea of how the game controls. The D-pad moves you forward and turns you, and hitting R2 allows Robert to look around. While jumping, as long as you have the jump button held, the controls shift to 8-way directional jumping, and the inclusion of Robert's shadow as a guide for landing makes for landing jumps with confidence. The shooting and special item controls are handled by the face buttons, and the large aiming reticule in the game means that hitting your targets is also a breeze. The music is also a high spot for the game as well. My scratched up ex-rental copy of the game has trouble with some of the later themes. However, the music is cheerful and upbeat, and I really like some of the songs. My favorite theme in the game is in the first level. It is a happy, uplifting theme that sounds like it could have been taken straight out of a 16-bit Squaresoft RPG. The bottom line. For a game that just turned 20 years old in Japan and will soon be 20 years old in North America, Jumping Flash's unique blend of genres has helped it stand the test of time. The mixture of first-person shooting and 3D platforming works beautifully and had me hooked so badly that I found it hard to even write this review, because I got caught up playing every time I booted it up. This game is not only a blast to play, still to this day, but is also on the list of the most incredibly innovative games that most gamers have never heard of. Ahead of its time, and still unique to this day. Quite frankly, if you've never played a jumping flash game, then you've never played anything like it. Jumping Flash and its sequel Jumping Flash 2 are available on the PlayStation Store. You can also find the original discs on eBay and Amazon and wherever else you can find them. Whoa, wait a minute. Isn't that Pyramid Head?